The prison gates opened, and I stepped out into the sunlight. 10 years locked away, and the world felt strange, faster, louder, colder. My name is Clara Sam, and people only remember me as the woman who went to prison for a crime I never truly confessed. Before I tell you how I got my revenge, hit that like button and tell me in the comments where you're watching from. Trust me, you'll want to hear how this ends. I thought freedom would feel lighter, but my heart was heavy with one thought: my daughter, Emily. She was only a child when they took me away. I dreamed of hugging her, hearing her call me Mom again. But what waited for me wasn't the reunion I imagined. The first thing I saw when I found her was humiliation. Emily's head was shaved, her eyes red from tears. She sat in the corner of her husband's family home while they laughed at her pain. They called it discipline. They called it tradition. But I saw cruelty. My fists clenched. I had missed 10 years of her life, and now this? What they didn't know, what nobody knew, was that prison didn't break me. Prison gave me patience. And in those 10 years, my fortune grew quietly, hidden in places they could never reach. I wasn't just free. I was ready for war. Emily avoided my eyes. Her shoulders shook as her husband's mother, Mrs. Harrison, barked orders from across the room. Go clean up. You look shameful. I wanted to pull Emily into my arms, but she stepped back, ashamed. Why are you here? She whispered, her voice shaking. It cut me deeper than prison walls ever could. Mrs. Harrison turned her sharp eyes on me. So you're the convict mother? No wonder Emily turned out weak. You should leave. You've done enough damage. Laughter followed her words. My daughter's humiliation was entertainment to them. I stood frozen, forcing my rage down. Emily's husband, Adam, barely looked up from his phone. She has no place here, he muttered. My hands trembled. They thought I was powerless, a broken woman just out of prison. But they had no idea of the quiet fortune waiting for me, nor the allies who still respected me. I swallowed my pride and walked out that day. But in my heart, I swore something: those who humiliated my daughter would regret every cruel laugh. The world thought I was ruined. They would soon learn I was more dangerous than ever. Love revenge stories? Subscribe now. We drop new ones every week, raw, emotional, and full of justice. Don't miss the next chapter. I rented a small motel room that night. The walls smelled of dust, but at least it was quiet. I sat on the bed and unfolded an old letter I had carried through prison. Emily's picture smiled up at me from the corner, a child holding crayons. I cried for the years I lost. But crying wouldn't change the past. I remembered Rebecca Hayes, the woman I had trusted with my savings before prison. I had given her everything, over $1 million, to secure Emily's future. She promised to use it for Emily's school and safety. When I called Rebecca's number, it was disconnected. My chest tightened. If she betrayed me, I would find out soon. The next morning, I walked through the city. Everything felt new: shiny screens, fast cars, strangers glued to their phones. I was a ghost in a world that had moved on. But I wasn't invisible. I still had old contacts, people who owed me favors, people who knew Clara Sam wasn't weak. I whispered to myself as I looked at Emily's photo again. I couldn't protect you before. But now, I will. And heaven help anyone standing in my way. Rebecca met me at a fancy cafe. She looked polished, her hair styled, diamonds on her fingers. She smiled, but her eyes flickered nervously when she saw me. Clara. I didn't think I'd see you again. I leaned forward. Where's the money I left for Emily? Rebecca stirred her coffee slowly. Things happened. Businesses failed. I tried, but the money is gone. Gone. My blood boiled. That money was Emily's lifeline. You lived in luxury while my daughter suffered, I said, my voice steady but sharp. Rebecca smirked. You can't threaten me. You're fresh out of prison. Nobody will believe you. She was wrong. I didn't need belief, I needed proof. And I had ways to get it. I left the cafe, my fists clenched. Rebecca thought she was safe, but I still had connections. I called an old friend, Marcus Green, who owed me loyalty. He promised to dig into Rebecca's accounts. That night, I sat under the motel's weak light, staring at Emily's photo. She didn't trust me now, but one day she would see the truth. And when that day came, I would stand beside her, not as a broken mother, but as her shield. Days passed, and Marcus delivered results. Rebecca hadn't lost the money. She had turned my savings into businesses, cafes, apartments, even a boutique. She was rich. Rich off my sacrifice. I held the papers, my heart pounding. Proof. She betrayed me, and I would make sure the world knew. But Rebecca wasn't my only problem. Emily's humiliation burned in my mind. I had followed her quietly, watched her struggle under the Harrison family's thumb. They mocked her for not being enough. They called her the convict's daughter. She walked with her head down, and every time, it shattered me. That night, I stood outside the Harrison mansion. Music spilled from the windows. Laughter, glasses clinking, the sound of people celebrating while Emily suffered inside. I whispered into the night, enjoy it now. Every brick, every laugh, every cruel word, you'll pay for all of it. I wasn't rushing revenge. Prison taught me patience. First, I would gather my strength. Second, I would expose their secrets. And finally, I would strike where it hurt most, their pride, their wealth, their false respect. Emily would rise again. And I would be the hand that lifted her. I called an old friend named Tom Reed. Tom had worked with me before I went away. He owed me favors from long ago. We met in a quiet office above a bakery. I told him everything. I showed him the paper that proved Rebecca had my money. My hands trembled but my voice did not. Tom listened and nodded. He said he would find more and he would follow every trail. I felt a small hope rise inside me. Tom left that day and said he would work fast. He had people who could follow bank paths and trace the money. He knew how to open closed doors. He knew how to ask quiet questions. I paid him a small fee and asked him to be careful. I did not want the Harrisons to know I was moving. I wanted them to think I was weak and alone. That way they would never see the storm coming. I thought of Emily sleeping on a thin blanket. I thought of her hair tied back and tired eyes. I promised her in my heart that I would not fail again. I will not stop. Tom worked nights and days. He came back with a stack of papers and a thumb drive. The papers showed money moving from an account I once used. They showed money going to Rebecca Hayes. She had bought 3 apartments, a fashion shop, and 2 cars. The paper had dates, addresses, and bank names. I read each page slowly. My throat burned with anger and shame. Rebecca had worn silk and walked in nice shoes while my daughter slept on a thin mattress. The papers also showed small payments to a lawyer who made deals look legal. I felt sick. But then a slow calm came over me. Proof made me steadier. I could plan now. Tom said he would keep digging for receipts and emails. He said there were hidden transfers and shell companies. He said people who helped Rebecca could be found. I felt the heavy weight of 10 years lift a little. I thought of all the nights Emily cried and said she had no home. I used a pen and circled the names I would use later. I kept breathing. I will not stop. I found Emily working a late shift at a small bakery. Her hands were floury and her hair was tied back. I stood in the doorway and watched her stack bread loaves. She looked up when she saw me. For a moment, I thought she would run and hug me. Instead she turned away. You should not be here, she said. Her voice was flat and careful. I pulled a small card from my pocket. Inside was a check and a short note. The note said, "For rent. From Mom." Her fingers shook when she opened it. She looked at the number and then out the window. "I do not want your money, Mom," she said, and her voice broke. The bakery smells made me remember when she was small and ate toast in my lap. I told her I only wanted to help. She wiped her face with the back of her hand. "I grew up without you," she said. "You left me." Those words cut like cold wind. I wanted to tell her the full truth. I wanted to show her the papers that proved Rebecca stole from us. But she pulled a jacket tight and walked out. I stood on the sidewalk and watched her go. I will not stop. That evening I went to a small news office. A reporter named Hall had written about small scams before. I did not use my name. I handed him copies of the bank records and the list of properties. I told him the story in a low voice. He raised an eyebrow and took the papers. "If this is true, it is big," he said. He looked at the dates and the apartment addresses and typed fast. He called a couple of contacts and set a quiet meeting. I left the office and waited across the street in my car. My heart beat hard. A reporter could make the truth loud, or he could bury it. Hall came out and waved at me. He said he would verify the records and check the public registry. He promised to call if he found more. I felt a small thrill. If the story landed in the paper, Rebecca could not hide. The Harrisons would feel the sting if everyone knew what they had laughed about. I thought of Emily walking home alone. I thought of her ashamed looks. The reporter would be my small voice. I will not stop. I planned a small move that week. The Harrisons had a family dinner to celebrate a new deal. They posted photos and a list of guests on social pages. I bought a table in the restaurant across the street and watched through the window. They were loud and bright in their Sunday best. Mrs. Harrison laughed and spoke about Emily like she was a joke. Adam checked his phone and smiled. None of them knew I watched. Tom was ready with more papers in case the reporter called. Aunt Molly, an old woman who once cared for me, stood by my side as a quiet friend. She brought hot tea and a steady hand. I felt a strange calm. The power of surprise was with me. I would not storm in that night. I would not yell. I would move quietly and smartly. The Harrisons thought they had one. They thought their laughs would never be paid back. But I had proof, a reporter, and plans that moved like small gears. My daughter would see my strength one day. I will not stop. The next morning, I met Tom at a small diner near the train station. He brought more files, this time showing emails between Rebecca and Adam Harrison. The emails spoke of money redirected from my account. They joked about how no one would ever believe me. I stared at the words until the letters blurred. Tom told me this was enough to sink them. But I shook my head. I wanted more. I wanted every piece of their greed laid bare. I wanted them crushed in public, not just in court. My daughter deserved more than hidden justice. I asked Tom to keep following the trail. He nodded and said he knew a banker who could help. My coffee grew cold as we planned. I imagined Emily walking home in the rain, believing she had no one. That image burned into me. The Harrisons thought prison made me weak. But prison sharpened me. It made me patient. It taught me silence is power. I folded the papers and put them in my bag. I whispered to myself, they will pay. Every single one of them will pay. I walked out into the gray morning, steady as stone. I will not stop. That afternoon, I followed Rebecca to a luxury boutique downtown. She wore a red coat and dark glasses, laughing on the phone as she handed over cash. The clerk bowed and smiled, treating her like a queen. My fists tightened in my pockets. I stood in the corner, half hidden behind a rack of coats, watching her. She picked expensive jewelry as if it were candy. The woman who had stolen my life was living mine. I thought of Emily's cracked shoes and tired eyes. I thought of her soft voice saying she did not want my money. Rage filled me, but I stayed calm. Storms are strongest when silent. I slipped out before Rebecca noticed. On the street, I called Tom. He told me Hall, the reporter, was close to printing. We needed one last piece, proof the apartments were bought with stolen funds. Tom said the banker could confirm this by tomorrow. My heart quickened. The trap was forming. Still, I felt the weight of Emily's cold words. She believed I left her. She believed I failed. That cut deeper than prison bars. But once the truth shone, she would see me. She would see I never stopped fighting. I will not stop. Hall called late that night. His voice was sharp and excited. Clara, I checked everything. The apartments, the boutique, the cars, all in Rebecca's name. And the money trail leads back to you. It's solid. My breath caught. For years I had dreamed of someone finally saying those words. Proof. Justice. Fire. Hall said he wanted to run the story next week, but he warned me. The Harrisons had friends in high places. They would fight back hard. He asked if I was ready for that storm. I told him I had been ready for 10 years. He laughed softly, almost in respect. Then get ready to see them fall, he said. After the call, I sat on the edge of my bed. The small apartment was quiet except for the ticking clock. I thought about Emily again. She still turned her face away from me. She still believed I had abandoned her. I wanted to tell her the truth right away. But no, I had to wait. I had to let her see it with the world. Then she would know I fought for her every single day. I lay back, eyes open, whispering into the dark. I will not stop. The next day, Tom and I met the banker in a dim office with blinds half closed. The banker's name was Mr. Lee. His hands shook as he laid out statements. He showed us how Rebecca and Adam used my frozen account to transfer money into new shells. Then they bought properties, shops, and even stocks. The details matched the emails and the receipts. Every line was another nail in their coffin. Mr. Lee warned us not to mention his name. He feared losing his job. I promised him silence. When we left the office, I felt taller, stronger. For years, I had carried shame like a chain. Now, proof was in my hands. Tom smiled for the first time. They're finished, he said. I nodded, but my heart still ached. Emily's rejection still cut me. She was the reason for every step I took. She was the reason I had survived prison nights. I wanted to run to her and tell her everything. But I knew I had to hold back. The world had to see the Harrisons for what they were. Then Emily would see me too. The truth was no longer hidden. The storm was near. I will not stop. That evening, I walked past the Harrisons' grand house. Lights shone through tall windows. I could see them gathered around a large table, laughing and drinking. They believed their empire was untouchable. They believed I was nothing. My fists clenched, but I did not go inside. Not yet. Instead, I pulled out my phone and called Hall. Print it, I said. My voice was calm, steady. Hall agreed. Tomorrow morning, the story would go live. Every paper, every screen, would carry Rebecca's name, Adam's greed, and the theft of a mother's fortune. I stood on the sidewalk a long time, staring at their bright house. They toasted inside, blind to the fire about to sweep them. My chest felt heavy, but also alive. Emily would see tomorrow. She would read the truth. Maybe then she would understand I never left her, that I never stopped loving her. Tomorrow the masks would fall. Tomorrow their laughter would choke. I walked away slowly, the night air cool on my face. The game was no longer in their hands. For 10 years I carried pain. Tomorrow, I would hand it back. My time had come. I will not stop. The morning came like thunder. Headlines splashed across every news site. local family linked to stolen funds. Rebecca's face filled the screen, her smile frozen under bold letters of greed. Adam's name was tied to the properties. The Harrisons were named as buyers of stolen wealth. I sat at a small cafe, coffee untouched, watching strangers whisper over papers. Phones buzzed, people pointed, and whispers grew into waves. By noon, TV crews gathered outside Harrison's office. Cameras flashed. Reporters shouted questions. Inside their glass building, I saw them pulling blinds down, hiding from the world. My heart pounded. For years, no one listened to me. Today, the world listened. Yet my chest still ached. Emily had not called. I feared she thought I had done this for revenge alone. I hoped she could see I did it for her. I hoped she could understand the fire behind my silence. Tom called me, laughing. "Clara, you've done it. They're drowning in their lies." But I knew this was only the first wave. The Harrisons were strong. They would fight back. I sipped my coffee and whispered into the rising storm, "I will not stop." The Harrisons struck back fast. That evening, Adam gave a press statement, calling the news false and hateful. He said they were victims of lies spread by jealous enemies. Rebecca stood beside him in a dark dress, pretending to cry. I watched on TV, my fists clenched. They twisted truth into smoke. Reporters shouted, asking about the apartments, the shops, the emails. Adam dodged and smiled. Rebecca pressed tissues to her eyes. The performance was smooth, but cracks showed. Some reporters kept pushing. Some knew the papers Hall had shown were real. Still, my anger burned. They had always played this game: twist, deny, smile. For a moment, I feared they would escape again. But Tom called and told me the district attorney had opened a case. The documents were too sharp to ignore. My chest loosened a little. Still, Emily stayed silent. I wondered if she believed their lies or if she feared me. That thought cut worse than any wound. I pressed my palms to the table. I told myself the truth had its own power. Their house of glass was already cracking. I only needed to keep steady. The storm was not done. I will not stop. 2 days later, I stood outside Emily's bakery. She was wiping counters, her face pale and drawn. Customers whispered as they scrolled on phones, showing her headlines. She bit her lip but stayed quiet. I walked in slowly, careful not to scare her. She froze when she saw me. "Why are you here again?" she asked. Her voice shook. I placed a folded newspaper on the counter. The headline screamed Rebecca's name. "It's true, Emily," I whispered. "They stole from me. They ruined us." She stared at the paper, then at me. Her eyes softened, but only for a second. "It doesn't change the years you weren't there," she said. Her words pierced me like knives. Tears burned my eyes, but I stayed calm. I was locked away for crimes I didn't do. "They framed me," I said. She looked down, torn between anger and doubt. Customers shuffled, watching quietly. Emily pushed the paper aside. "I don't know what to believe," she whispered. My chest ached, but I stepped back. "Then watch, Emily. Watch them fall," I said. She didn't answer. But for the first time, she didn't turn away. That small crack of light gave me strength. I will not stop. The Harrisons' empire began to crumble. Shops shut their doors. Partners cut ties. Friends stopped calling. News vans camped outside their homes. Rebecca's smile faded in every photo. Adam's shoulders slumped as he avoided reporters. Still, they fought, filing motions, hiring lawyers, throwing money into smoke. But the weight of truth pressed harder each day. Hall's articles kept coming, each one sharper, each one louder. Tom sent me updates, laughing as their world shrank. Yet I felt no joy. My heart stayed heavy with Emily's doubt. I wanted her to see not just their fall, but my fight. At night, I walked past her bakery window, watching her sweep floors alone. She carried so much pain, so much mistrust. I longed to hold her, to tell her I never stopped loving her. But I knew timing mattered. Soon, the trial would start. Soon, more truths would rise. Until then, silence was my shield. The Harrisons were learning what silence felt like now, cold, heavy, endless. I closed my eyes under the streetlight and whispered again, I will not stop. A week later, the Harrisons were dragged into court. Cameras flashed as they walked through iron gates, faces pale and tight. Rebecca wore black, her eyes hollow. Adam looked older, crushed by weight he could not carry. I sat in the back row of the courtroom, quiet as stone. Papers spread across tables, lawyers shuffled, and judges called order. The air buzzed with whispers and tapping pens. Evidence spilled across screens, emails, transfers, property deeds. My name appeared again and again, tied to stolen accounts. Gasps rose from the crowd. Rebecca's face twisted, Adam clenched his jaw. I sat straighter, but my eyes searched for only one thing, Emily. She slipped quietly into the room, sitting far at the back. My chest tightened. She looked at me, just for a moment. Our eyes locked. Hers were filled with questions, but no longer hate. My throat burned, but I stayed still. The judge's gavel struck. The trial had begun. This was no longer whispers in dark halls. This was truth, laid bare in bright lights. The Harrisons would not escape. Not this time. I gripped the bench tight and whispered only to myself, I will not stop. The courtroom filled with tension as witnesses spoke. The banker testified, his hands shaking, but his words clear. The Harrisons had stolen from Clara Sam. Screens showed signed transfers and forged documents. Rebecca's face crumbled, and Adam shouted, calling it lies, but the evidence was too strong. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Emily sat frozen, her hands clenched on her lap. I didn't move. I kept my eyes fixed on her. When the judge asked me to speak, I rose slowly. My voice was steady. I lost 10 years of my life because of their greed. My daughter lost her childhood. Today I want the truth heard, not just for me, but for her. The room fell silent. I sat down, my heart pounding. Emily's eyes glistened. She turned away, but I saw the crack in her wall. It was the first time she had truly listened. That gave me strength. The trial pushed forward, each day heavier than the last. But the chains that bound me for 10 years now lay broken on the floor. I was no longer a prisoner of their lies. The Harrisons were the ones trapped now. I whispered to myself again, I will not stop. On the third day of trial, Rebecca finally broke. Her voice cracked as she admitted the money trail, blaming Adam for pushing her into it. The courtroom buzzed, reporters scribbling. Adam's face turned red, veins bulging as he shouted she was lying. The judge slammed the gavel, demanding order. But it was too late. Their unity was shattered, their lies fighting against each other. I sat still, calm as stone, watching them unravel. Emily stared wide-eyed, her lips parted. She looked at me, almost in disbelief. At last, the truth was not just written, it was spoken from Rebecca's mouth. My chest tightened. I wanted to reach out to Emily, but I stayed patient. Timing mattered. The jury listened as lawyers pressed harder. More receipts, more emails, more voices joined the flood. The Harrisons could no longer keep their story straight. Each word they spoke dug their hole deeper. Tom leaned in beside me and whispered, "You've won, Clara." But I shook my head. Winning wasn't the end. I wanted more. I wanted Emily's heart to heal. I wanted her to see I never abandoned her. That was the victory I longed for. And I knew it was close. I will not stop. The verdict day arrived. The jury returned with stern faces. Everyone in the courtroom held their breath. Guilty, the foreman said. Rebecca gasped and clutched her chest. Adam slammed his fist on the table, shouting at the judge. Guards moved fast, pulling him back. The gavel struck, sharp as thunder. 10 years in prison for Adam. Heavy fines and seized assets for Rebecca. Their empire was gone in a blink. Cameras flashed. Reporters shouted. The world outside roared. But I sat silent, still. My eyes searched for Emily. She was crying quietly, tears streaking down her face. She looked at me and didn't turn away this time. After court, she walked toward me slowly. My heart raced. She whispered, "It's true. All of it." Her voice cracked. I nodded. "Every day in prison, I thought of you," I said. She broke then, falling into my arms. The years of silence shattered. She sobbed, her body shaking against mine. I held her tight, feeling 10 years of pain dissolve. The Harrisons were finished. My name was cleared. But the only victory that mattered was Emily in my arms again. I closed my eyes and whispered, I did not stop. The weeks after the trial were strange. People who once spat at my name now nodded in respect. Neighbors whispered apologies. Strangers offered kind words. But I cared little for them. My focus was Emily. She moved slowly back into my life, still cautious, still healing. We shared quiet dinners, long talks, and heavy silences. She told me about her lonely years, the hunger, the shame, the nights she cried. I told her about prison, the cold, the fights, the endless walls. We cried together, two broken halves finding each other again. One night, Emily held my hand and said, "I'm proud of you, Mom." Those words healed more than any court could. The Harrisons had lost everything. Homes, shops, their names. Reporters said they were living in a small apartment under watch. Their laughter was gone forever. And I had my daughter again. My fortune was still there, but it felt like dust compared to her smile. Revenge gave me justice. But love gave me life again. I sat with Emily in the quiet and whispered to myself, I will not stop. But now, it meant something new. I would not stop loving her. Months passed, and the world moved on. The Harrisons faded into shadows, forgotten except in stories of greed and downfall. Rebecca wrote letters from her cell, begging for mercy, but I never answered. Adam sat bitter in prison, blaming everyone but himself. Their empire was gone, their names cursed. Justice had been served. Yet for me, life was no longer about them. Emily and I rebuilt slowly, brick by brick. We laughed again, cooked meals, even planned a small trip. Trust was not fully restored, but it was growing, alive like spring flowers after a storm. One evening, Emily asked, "Do you regret it all?" I looked at her and shook my head. "Every scar, every year, it was worth it to stand here with you." She smiled faintly, tears in her eyes. I knew then that I had won the only battle that mattered. The world thought my story was about revenge. But it was never about the Harrisons. It was always about Emily. I walked out of prison into a storm, but I came out holding my daughter's hand. That was my true fortune. I whispered once more, not as a promise but as peace, I will not stop. If this story moved you, don't forget to like the video, subscribe for more powerful narratives, and share your thoughts in the comments. We'd love to hear what part hit you the hardest. Thanks for watching.